Concept of Sunnah in the Muwatta of Malik ibn Anas by Mohammed Yusuf Guraya, Montreal, Canada, 1969. Therefore, it was the final decision of the Prophet in that regard that it should have been binding. The Tabuk expedition after the Battle of Hunain was no doubt during the lifetime of the Prophet, but no fighting took place and no booty was gained. Therefore, the Hunain battle was the last in that sense. Further, Shafi'i and Zurqani have pointed out that the Prophet did the same at the Battle of Badr, Uhud, and Mut'ah, etc. Malik to Abu Zubair to Jabir ibn Abdullah said, "We sacrificed animals at Hudaybiyah, one camel by 7 participants, and one cow by 7 participants. Malik, Amara, Yasr, it's not clear, Yasser, Ata ibn Yasar told us that Abu Ayyub said, we used to sacrifice sheep. The head of the house sacrificed one sheep on behalf of himself and his household." After relating these hadiths, Malik prefers the saying of some unknown person and states, "The best that I heard about the sacrifices of the camel, of the cow, of the sheep, is that a person should sacrifice only on behalf of himself and his household. A camel, a cow, and a sheep, any one of these animals which he possesses, associating in the sacrifice only his housefolks, with the exclusion of others." The first two hadiths are very clear on the point that the Prophet and 1,400 companions at Hudaybiyah sacrificed one camel and one cow on behalf of each 7 persons, and the continuous practice of the companions was the same. Malik, not approving these hadiths, declares his own opinion. The sacrificial camel or cow will be sacrificed only by one person. A person would sacrifice only on his behalf and on behalf of his housefolks. As for the view that a group of people may buy a cow or a sheep, and then each one of them take a share of the meat, is not allowed. We have heard that the sacrificial animal will not be shared. There is evidence in the Muwatta that Malik prefers sometimes hadith from the successors against the hadith from the Prophet. We have already seen a hadith from the Prophet on al-Umrah, a life donation, which says, if any one of you donates something for life, the donated thing is for the donee and for his descendants. It is for the person to whom it is donated. It will never return to the donor because he has donated something which will be inherited. As against this clear hadith from the Prophet, Malik has preferred that what Qasim ibn Muhammad, his successor, has said on the matter. There is an explicit hadith of the Prophet: the widow has greater right in herself about her marriage than her guardian, i.e., she can marry without the permission of her guardian, and the virgin should be consulted by her guardian about her marriage. After reporting this hadith from the Prophet in the Muwatta, Malik supports the practice which says, Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad and Salim ibn Abdullah used to marry their virgin daughters and did not consult them. Malik approves the practice of Al-Qasim and Salim against the hadith of the Prophet. Says, the matter in our opinion is accordingly. From what has been said so far, we can conclude that in the Muwatta there is enough evidence to establish the fact that Malik uses the hadith from the Prophet as legal arguments, but they are not conclusive. Rather, they can be superseded by other arguments. The other arguments which can supersede the hadith from the Prophet are the hadiths from the companions, the practice of Medina, the considered personal opinions of Malik, coupled with the statements of some ambiguous authorities, and the hadiths from the successors. Number 3. Next, we must take into account hadiths from the companions and their positions in the legal thought of Malik. Hadiths from the companions cited in the Muwatta are not only almost equal in number to the hadiths from the Prophet, but they have also the same legal force. Just as the hadiths from the Prophet are not conclusive in authority, neither are hadiths from the companions conclusive. They can supersede hadiths from the Prophet, as we have seen. But in turn, they can also be superseded by hadiths and other legal arguments from later authorities. Malik to Hisham ibn Urwa said, Umar ibn Khattab recited a chapter requiring prostration when he was on the pulpit on Friday. He descended and prostrated himself, and the people followed him in prostration. Umar possessed a very high position among the legal authorities according to Malik. Nevertheless, he does not approve the practice of Umar when it does not agree with his own doctrine. This is why Malik does not approve the act of Umar's descending from the pulpit for prostration and takes shelter under the amal, and declares clearly this is not the practice that the Imam should descend from the pulpit and prostrate himself when he recites the chapters requiring prostration from the pulpit. Malik to Nafi' to Abdullah bin Dinar to Abdullah bin Umar said, a person asked the Prophet about the night prayer. The Prophet replied, the night prayer should be offered 2 by 2, and when someone is afraid of the dawn, he should add 1 rak'ah at the end of the twos, and thus make the number odd. Nafi' to Malik said, I was with Abdullah bin Umar in Mecca, and the sky was cloudy, and Allah became Abdullah became afraid of the dawn during his night prayer, and he added 1 rak'at to his already said rak'at, which were even in number. Then the sky became clear, and he realized that it was still night, so he added 1 rak'at to the odd number and evened the rak'ats of his prayer. Then he continued praying 2 by 2. Then again he became afraid of the dawn. He added 1 rak'at to his even number and made the number into the number of the prayer into an odd number. Malik from Ibn Shihab to Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas said, say his night prayer after the Isha, and he used to make it odd by 1. These 3 hadiths, one from the Prophet and the others from Abdullah ibn Umar and Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, very explicitly speak about the practice of the Prophet and the companions, but Malik does not approve them. He rather gives his own opinion combined with the practice. He says the practice with us is not according to what has been related, but the least number of witr is 3. Malik from Abu Ubaid, from Ubaidah, from bin Nusayyi, from Qais, from Al-Harith, from Abdullah bin Abdul Sanabih, said, I came to Medina during the caliphate of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and said Al-Maghrib prayer behind him. He recited in the first 2 rak'ahs the Qur'an and a chapter from the Qisar chapters of the Qur'an. Then he stood up in the 3rd rak'ah, and I got closer to him and I heard him reciting Qur'an and this verse, رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا. Apologies, the Arabic is not given. Malik, Nafi', Abdullah bin Umar used to recite in each of the 4 rak'ahs the Qur'an, another chapter of the Qur'an, and then he said the prayer alone. Against the practice of Abu Bakr and Abdullah ibn Umar, Malik favors his own practice and says, we do not like this practice. Rather, we say our practice is not based on this practice. Nothing will be recited from the Qur'an in the 3rd rak'ah. Ashraf pointed out to the Rabi' when Umar ibn Abdul Aziz heard of the practice of Abu Bakr, he adopted it. Then Ashraf asked him, do you leave the practice of Abu Bakr ibn Umar ibn Abdul Aziz for the practice? To which Rabi' retorts confidently, we are opposed to all this, and we repeat nothing will be added after the first 2 rak'ah of the Qur'an. Malik ibn Shihab, Iraq ibn Malik, Sulaiman ibn Yasir said, a person from the Bani Sa'ad ibn Layth was riding on a horse. He trampled the toe of a person from Juhayna, which bled profusely. Consequently, he died. Umar ibn al-Khattab asked the defendants, do you swear by God 50 oaths that the deceased did not die? They refused to swear. Then he asked the plaintiffs, do you swear? They also refused. Then Umar decided to award half the blood money to be paid to the Banu Sa'ad. Stay tuned for many more parts.